Greenpeace is an independent global campaigning organisation that acts to change attitudes and behaviour, to protect and conserve the environment, and to promote peace. We are the largest direct action environmental organisation in the world, with nearly 3 million members. At Greenpeace, our essential value is to protect our fragile Earth. We represent the planet by giving it a voice that demands solutions. We want to win campaigns for the environment. We take pride in our work to ensure that all of our campaigns reflect our fundamental respect for democratic principles and to seek solutions to promote global social equity. Greenpeace's goal is to ensure the ability of the Earth to nurture life in all its diversity. We want to keep our planet healthy so our children can live life to the full, as we have been able to. Embarking on a clean energy future is the safest and easiest way to protect our way of life. Therefore, our goal is to fulfill the world's energy requirements through renewable sources as soon as possible. Greenpeace's first mission took place in 1971, when a small group of activists aimed to stop a nuclear weapons test at an island off of the coast of Alaska by placing themselves in the path of the bomb. This protest drew a lot of attention, and public opposition later became so massive that the test site ended up being abandoned and restored as a wildlife refuge. In 1979, the single worldwide organisation Greenpeace International was formed. In the 40 years following, our focuses have expanded to many environmental problems that harm the sustainability of the Earth for future generations. We use creative confrontation, which is often controversial but never violent, to expose these global environmental problems and to push for solutions which are essential to a green and peaceful future. Many of our campaigns are now focused on climate change, as we aim to protect our remaining forests, guard our oceans, create a future free of toxic chemicals, and push for sustainable agriculture, all while respecting the fundamental link between humans and the environment. We aim to provide protection and secure our world for those who are most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. We stretch over 26 independent national and regional offices around the world, covering operations in more than 55 countries. Our global governance structure reflects our fundamental respect for global democratic principles and our need to maintain a high level of internationalism and coordination. Greenpeace International is based in Amsterdam, where a team of 250 staff coordinate global Greenpeace policy and strategy. We are governed by an international board of directors, and each national and regional organisation have a separate board of directors who are usually volunteers and activists with firm roots in the local environmental communities. These board members are well positioned to represent the wider public in influencing our policy and decisions. We also have hundreds of crew members on our ships, as well as 15,000 volunteers worldwide. We confirm our absolute financial independence by not accepting donations from companies, governments, government organisations, or political parties. We have been the subject of criticism over the years due to our confrontational approach to important environmental issues, and because of this, in some regions we are not as influential as we once were. Our mission as a stakeholder is to promote environmentally friendly solutions and to encourage the use of renewable energy sources to combat the greatest current threat to our world, which is climate change. Before we discuss our position in the climate change debate, it is important to understand what exactly climate change is and what causes it. Climate change is a change in Earth's overall climate. It could be a change in Earth's usual temperature or a change in where rain and snow usually falls on the planet. Climate takes a long time to change, occurring over spans of hundreds or even millions of years. There are many natural occurrences that can cause climate to change. For example, a change in Earth's orbit around the Sun, an increase or decrease in solar output, or changes in volcanic activity can affect Earth's climate. However, according to most climate scientists, the main cause of the current global warming trend is due to human activity that expands the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect is essentially warming that occurs when the atmosphere traps heat radiating from Earth. Certain gases in the atmosphere, known as greenhouse gases, are responsible for this as they block heat from escaping. Greenhouse gases include water vapour, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and chlorofluorocarbons, also known as CFCs. Over the last century, human activities have altered the natural greenhouse. The burning of fossil fuels has increased the concentration of atmospheric carbon dioxide, while the clearing of land for agriculture and urbanisation has also increased greenhouse gas levels in the atmosphere. In its fourth assessment report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change concluded that there is more than 90% probability that human activities over the past 50 years have warmed our planet. It also concluded that human produced greenhouse gases, such as carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, have caused much of the observed increase. Climate change is an imminent threat to the sustainability of our planet. From our perspective as a stakeholder, our aim is to decrease the level of human produced greenhouse gases so that we can return to natural greenhouse levels. The most effective way to start this change is to push for renewable energy sources that will fulfill the world's energy requirements and spare the continued burning of harmful fossil fuels.
As an independent global campaigning organisation, Greenpeace work to protect the environment from threats to the climate such as coal and oil mining. We have been successful in protecting the climate from the threat of fossil fuel emissions by lobbying, evident in the success of Norway. Their government last year has labelled coal investments as unacceptable by the Government Pension Fund, which is one of the largest divestments of coal investment ever. Changing attitudes of coal and oil production and moving towards renewable energy sources is key in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The actions of Norway is an encouraging sign that the decision makers are starting to own up to their responsibilities towards the planet. We also work in more local divisions to combat issues, evident in the success of Greenpeace Southeast Asia, who, working with other environmental groups, managed to halt a coal expansion equivalent to 70 large coal power plants in Vietnam earlier this year. By presenting research to the Prime Minister, he has agreed to stop all further coal-fuelled energy plants and move towards renewable energy, in hopes to reduce emissions that are not only harmful towards the environment but cause 4,300 premature deaths every year in Vietnam alone. We also lobby against the production and use of hazardous chemicals which pose as a threat to the climate. For 20 years we have lobbied against HFC chemicals, which is used by hundreds of companies for appliances such as refrigerators. Refrigeration companies have finally agreed to not use these chemicals which deplete the ozone layer worse than CO2. We work as an international body with national branches working under us from our headquarters in Norway. We also work closely with other environmental groups, researchers and activists to achieve our targets by campaigning and spreading awareness and putting pressures on governments and corporations. We plan to create a world that uses 100% renewable energy, improve the efficiency of energy, cut out oil and fossil fuel use, implement renewably powered internet, and redistribute finances from investments in oil and fossil fuel-based projects to renewable energy. We see awareness and political pressure from the public as a crucial step towards solutions to climate change. We have been protecting the environment from dangers to its climate from our inception in 1971. We started as a group that protested dangerous nuclear testing but has moved with the changing global context to address what we consider the number one threat facing our planet, climate change. This has steered our direction by highlighting the need to protect the environment from dangers to the climate. Since 1988, we have campaigned for action to protect the climate and were successful with the creation of the 1997 Kyoto Protocol, where industrialised nations agreed to set legally binding reduction goals on greenhouse gases.
Greenpeace's Energy Revolution analysis shows that a 100% renewable energy future is possible. In order for this to happen, governments must replace dirty energy systems such as coal, oil, gas and nuclear power with 100% renewable resources such as sun and wind. Greenpeace has developed a global energy vision which works to cut carbon emissions while also ensuring that economies such as China and India's also have the energy they need to develop. It's essential that political action is taken to shift subsidies away from fossil fuels and introduce incentives for people to make the transition to using smaller cars with more efficient engines, as well as with utilities operators and energy-intensive industries to redefine policy mechanisms and regulatory structures. Greenpeace also emphasises the requirement for stopping deforestation as one of the easiest and most efficient ways of preventing climate change. As well as political movements, there must be corporate action to investigate, expose, and confront environmental abuse by corporations around the world, which has already influenced many multinational corporations to change their practices. Consumers can also have significant power in forcing such changes, which has been seen in companies such as Nestle, McDonald's, and Kraft, who have changed their sourcing policies after consumer pressure. Greenpeace uses sensational non-violent confrontations to expose governments and corporations that abuse environmental laws. Such bold tactics create journalistic buzz, get the public's attention, and frequently influence national and international environmental and conservation policies. Non-governmental organisations typically engage in internal advocacy and target political decision makers. However, a study by Concord in 2003 showed that collective external advocacy campaigns by NGOs only had a limited impact on decisions and directives of the European Commission. The study concluded that strategies used to influence civil servants in the European institution who are less receptive to public opinion campaigns needed to be revised. Previous research has found that bingos have a much greater influence on the outcome of the negotiations, which is problematic for Greenpeace with their very contrasting interests. Studies have found that the implications that NGOs such as Greenpeace have depend on the nature, history, and framing of the issue. Demonstrations and lobbying at international levels are frequently ignored as such negotiations have very little leeway, so organisations such as Greenpeace must work towards establishing long-term lobbying by targeting the media and establishing such attitudes well before the negotiations begin. International NGOs have recently gained more and more recognition from institutions they campaign against. Such successful lobbying requires entrepreneurial strategies, close networks, and early input on the domestic level.
Among the other stakeholders, we agree with China and Australia whilst disagreeing with the European Union and the United States. Even though China is the world's largest greenhouse gas emitter, a Greenpeace organisation working in East Asia is currently helping them fight their input to climate change. A start to this was urging China to move away from coal, since it is the burning of coal which releases a lot of emissions that fuel global warming. As well, the mining of coal is a source of methane, a very potent global warming gas. Next was instigating a plan for Hong Kong to increase investment in renewable energy and establish strong energy efficiency standards. Additionally, Greenpeace in East Asia are also working with scientists, industries, and governments to push China to fulfill their great potential for renewable energy. China may be slow with taking actions against their contribution to climate change, but they are willing to listen and make a change with our help. Now, Greenpeace in Australia. There was a plan which was brought about this year where the fueling company BP wanted to drill into one of Australia's most pristine marine reserves. BP happens to be the reason behind the Deepwater Horizon oil spill disaster which occurred in 2010 in the Gulf of Mexico. Greenpeace rallied Australians and together were powerful enough to create such pressure that no major corporation could ignore and in turn put BP's reputation in the spotlight. Our actions included getting signed petitions and getting in contact with National Offshore Petroleum Safety and Environmental Management Authority, which is an independent federal health and safety oil regulator, to reject BP's plans, and as a result, our unity with Australia won over and successfully stopped the oil drilling event. Therefore, our connection with Australia grew and aligned as we protected the earth when united as one. Lastly, we disagree with the European Union and the United States because earlier this year, the Greenpeace team in the Netherlands got a hold of and released secret documents of the TTIP negotiations between the United States and Europe. TTIP stands for Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. TTIP was a trade deal between the European Union and the United States economies. However, the main negotiation here was to lower EU's standards on accepting genetically modified foods or the use of harmful pesticides on produce.
TTIP's main focus was on removing trade barriers, which could in turn boost their trade, which includes removing or lowering certain health and safety standards and even altering some labelling laws. This trade deal made trade quite liberal, and the deregulation of certain aspects within such a sensitive industry was a cry for controversy, and the release of some very risky products being used in restaurants or on shelves, such as genetically modified organisms, chemicals, and hormone-treated meat. These factors most definitely suggest very negative health and environmental impacts, and as a non-government funded organisation such as Greenpeace, who is all about protecting and conserving the environment we live in, the TTIP trade between the EU and the US is not something we support and agree on.
In summary, the threat of climate change is one faced by a currently divided and complex global community. We, Greenpeace, aim to increase awareness relating to the issues of climate change and garner the attention of the global public audiences in order to create real societal change in favour of our social and political values. Focusing on the need to protect the environment and aiming to reduce and prevent further environmental degradation. Our goals are met through non-violent confrontation, lobbying and campaigning, often achieved through the aid of public support and the work of our many staff and volunteers from the different local and international Greenpeace divisions around the world, much like the ways in which our organisation began during its first mission back in 1971. We, Greenpeace, will continue our mission to protect and conserve the environment and to promote peace with our core principles firmly rooted in providing a voice that demands solutions and above all defends our fragile earth from those who would seek to exploit it.